It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm Country Jim.
And our guest today is Barry Pollack. You know, I was in radio for a lot of years and talked to a lot of promoters, and that's kind of what you used to do. And own some clubs and did some other things.
Yeah, and that's how I started out. I got out of college in 1967 at the University of Houston. Didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I was going to coach and teach and try to survive doing that. But my upbringing had been so much involved in music that I lived in a little town called El Campo, Texas. Mm-hmm. And my daddy was a Brooklyn Jewish fella, and my mother was an East Texas Baptist. And so this is what you got.
Well, you said you're involved in music. How
I did it was, it's a weird story. One of my best friends, dearest friends, was a fellow by the name of Sammy Alfano in Houston. And Sammy worked for Mercury Records. And he went off in 1967 to be B.J. Thomas's road manager. And when he did that, he was going to have to be replaced. And so there was a fellow by the name of Jack Bernstein out of Dallas that was the branch manager here in Texas for Mercury Records. And he was going to fly in and interview all those people. Well, we kind of outfoxed him. Sammy took me around. He knew I loved music, and he knew I loved the business. So he took me around and introduced me to all the radio stations. He took me and introduced me to Bill Bailey at Kick and Bill Young at Kilt and all the people at Buddy Covington and that bunch at KNUZ and introduced me. And so they rather liked me. It was a shock. And so when Jack Bernstein came to town, Sammy, he said, okay, we got all these interviews lined up. And Sammy, don't have to worry about it, bud. He called everybody bud. He said, you don't have to worry about it, bud. He said, Barry's got it locked. So I went to work for Mercury Records in 1967 as local promotion man, making $128 a week in an expense account. Well, they thought from my house in southwest Houston to Pasadena, Texas was 300 or 400 miles. They didn't know. They were in Chicago. So I lived pretty much on my expense account.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So that's how I got started.
Right. And you lived in Houston when you started
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
I was
Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. But don't tell anybody, I'll have to kill you.
All right.
I was born in Brooklyn. And like I said, my daddy and mother, they met when he was in the service. He was stationed down in Palacios at the Army Air Base down there. And they got hooked up. And I was what come out of the Union. and when I was young, the only way I'd take a nap at home was Mom would put on some country station out of Houston or pick it up from somewhere. Hell, at that time you could pick up WLAC, and the only way I'd take a nap is she'd lay a blanket on the floor and turn on country music, and off I went in the slumberland, you know. Mm-hmm. So I always loved music, but I never really got involved playing any instruments. I just liked it behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So,
well, go ahead and tell about the journey after Mercury.
Yeah, after Mercury, about 1970, Capitol approached me, and what got me hooked up. I know you guys pretty much want to talk about country music, and that's.
We talk about all music, really.
But
we do that all the time.
I was going to ask that question because I know you, and I know you like music other than.
Oh yeah, I love. You know, to me, there's only two kinds of music: good and bad.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes I listen to classical music to this day, you know, and I'll just do nothing but spend 2 days listening to Merle Haggard, you know. So, but then 1970, I left Mercury and went to work for Capitol Records, and I was very fortunate at that time because they were such a hot label. Capitol was so hot, and even Mercury was hot back in the day, you know, especially with country music. They were real big at one time in country music, and then Capitol was, you know, they still had Merle and Buck Owens and all those people. Sonny James, who was a monster back then. And Sonny, he was a real treat. He used to send me a cashmere sweater for Christmas every year. And Sonny was quite a gentleman. He was a true Southern gentleman. He would not play any place where they sold alcohol. Wow. So he wouldn't go into any big old honky-tonks. He played a lot of state fairs and big functions like that, you know. But he sold a lot of records.
So did they? So you had not just the radio stations, but you had some relationship and connection with the artist?
Yes. Well, whenever they'd send an artist in your area, like anywhere in Texas, they'd send whoever'd come down. Merle would be playing some Panther Hall or, in Fort Worth or someplace. And so I had to go hook him up, take him to the radio stations and do interviews. And that's when radio was king.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's back when it was on mom and pop.
Yeah, and that's how we broke records. We'd start a record off, say, in Houston, and then move it to Dallas, and then move it to Oklahoma City, and then then move it to Denver, each and every direction. And
well, now, did they have divisions, like a country music division,
yes,
then a pop?
Yes, that's right.
Were you ever in, like, the rock and roll? Well, Capitol didn't do much rock and roll, did they?
Well, oh, yeah, they did. Back in the early 70s, back in about, that's really funny you should do that, because they divided the country, and they made me one of their, like, 4 regional, I was a Southwest regional major market top 40 promo man. And I went all over Texas, and they moved me to Dallas, and I worked out of Dallas. And I went all over Texas and all the way up to Kansas City. And then WTIX in New Orleans was a big station back then, and in Denver, KIMNN, in Denver, Colorado. And these were major, what we call top 40 stations. And, Capitol at that time, heck, they had Grand Funk Railroad, Steve Miller, all that stuff, boy. It was...
Did you get to meet any of those guys?
All of them. Wow. I met I was very fortunate. I got to meet all the Beatles. And Capitol had divided up, and they had distribution for Apple. And so all the Beatles stuff was on Apple, but Capitol had distribution. So it was the record business was blowing and going back then. It was.
So you did rock and roll for many, many years.
Yes.
And did you come back to country eventually? Or
yes. When
were you doing both at the same time?
Yeah, I was doing both. No. When I went to at Capitol, I started out doing. I was doing local promotion in Houston for Capitol when I went to work for them. Hell, they doubled my salary, and I couldn't wait to go to work for them. Oh, that's a funny story. You guys appreciate this. I was approached to go to work for Capitol, and so somebody had told me that they were getting ready to have their national convention in Honolulu. So they offered me this job, and they said, okay, and they doubled my salary. Whoa. And I said, I'll tell you what, when do you want me to start? And they said, tomorrow. You can start whenever you want, as soon as possible. And I said, okay, how about, I know y'all are going on your national convention, have it in Honolulu, Hawaii. Why don't you throw in a trip for me to go to Hawaii? And they went, you got it. So I got to fly to Hawaii, stayed there for 2 weeks at the Ilokai Hotel, and no one knew me. They had all these meetings all day long, and I didn't have to go to none of them because no one knew who the hell I was anyway. So I'd lay out by the pool drinking those exotic drinks. Oh, and when I got to the hotel to check in, they went, we're sorry, Mr. Pollack, we're out of rooms. We'll have to put you in the yada yada suite. And I went, oh, the real me. So they had me a big suite in the Ilokai Hotel And no one knew who I was, so I didn't have to attend any of the meetings. And I got to tell this story.
Please do.
I got to tell this story. I'm laying by the pool, having some of those exotic drinks, and this guy comes up and he goes, "I know you don't know who I am. My name is such and such, 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 and I'm the executive vice president of Capitol, and I know you're coming to work for us. Matter of fact, you're on the payroll right now." And I went, and he says, "I got a job for you." Well, I don't know if I've ever told Jim this story. I said, "Well, whatever you want me to do." And so he pulls out this roll of money. I mean, it could choke a horse. Well, I ended up counting it, and there was $14,000 in it. He gives it to me, and he says, "You got to go down to the Honolulu jail and bail Linda Ronstadt and her band out of jail."
Wow.
I went, "What?" And he says, "Yep, she got busted this morning. They bought stolen tickets, hot tickets, to fly over there from L.A., and I can't send any of our employees down there. And that. You're the man, perfect man for the job." So I went down there and bailed Linda Ronstadt. Now here's another part of this story. That the next Saturday night they had a big concert there at the hotel, and all these bands were playing. They had country bands, they had pop, they had everybody you could think of, the Letterman, Peggy Lee, Lou Rawls. Singing at this concert. And then Linda and her band was to play, and she was just getting hot then. So she got up on stage and she said, "Before I do my first song, I want to thank somebody, a very important man here at Capitol Records." And she said, "Mr. Barry Pollack, would you stand up and take a bow?" And
That's
I didn't know
awesome.
what to do. And the light was going around, so I stood up and waved. No one knew who the hell I was. You know? It was like a funny story. I mean, so
That's awesome.
that was my introduction to Capitol.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time there.
What was the name of her band? Stone Canyon Ponies? Or something?
Stone Ponies.
Stone Ponies, okay.
Yeah.
Because Ricky Nelson had
Yeah, right. Yeah,
something ponies.
Yeah,
or
right. There was something. Yeah,
something, I don't know.
Did you ever meet him?
Ricky. Yeah, he lived in the valley, not too far from where I lived. I lived in a little area called when I worked for ABC in Capricorn. I worked for Capricorn too, on the West Coast, and I lived in a little area called Toluca Lake. It's real close to Burbank, right by the studios. All the studios there, the Burbank studios and the Universal studios weren't too far. And I'd go down to this place called Tommy's Hamburgers all the time. Had great hamburgers. And get me a big old hamburger. And Ricky would come in there from time to time. And he used to bring he had two little twin boys who later tried to sing, I think. Right. I don't know. But anyway, they both wore these big, thick glasses. They couldn't see hard, and they wore them big, thick glasses, and he put them in this batting cage. He had a batting cage, baseball batting cage there by this Tommy's Hamburger place. And these kids, poor kids, would struggle, and I'd sit out there and drink a cold beer and eat a hamburger and laugh at Ricky Nelson's kids.
You know, I wanna mention somebody that meant a lot to me. Albert E. Brumley, who wrote "I'll Fly Away," he had a son, Tom Brumley, who played pedal steel, and he played for Buck Owens as he was a buckaroo, but he also played for Ricky Nelson, played steel with him. But anyway,
I think he was a Stone Canyon band.
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was
yeah.
Rick's band.
No ponies, but just the
You're
Stone
right, yeah,
Canyon.
yeah.
I knew it was something. I couldn't remember.
well, let's journey on.
And anyway, when I'm in L.A., you know, I got hooked up with the people at the Palomino Club.
Oh, wow.
And I just loved that place. And the guy who owned it, his guy named Tommy Thomas, and real nice fella. And his wife at that time was named Sherry, and my wife at that time was named Sherry. So they became buddies, and we'd go to the horse track together all the time. And just anybody and everybody would come in there and play at the Palomino.
Yeah, we just had Tony Booth on. He was talking about the Palomino.
Yeah, he used to play the house band there.
He was the house band, that's right, for several years.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years with Capitol?
Yes.
And then?
Then I went to work for, God, it just passed by so swiftly when you're having so much fun. Those were the days, DAZ.
Well, when did you get back into?
I came back into Texas in 1976.
Okay.
And I worked for MCA Records.
Okay, and that was country promotions, or was that...
That was everything.
Everything,
once
okay,
again.
okay.
But once again, MCA was so big country. And
Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys was on MCA, I think.
yes.
Yep.
Oh,
And Merle went to MCA eventually.
And Merle had Merle on MCA. Had
Loretta
Lynn, Conway.
Yeah.
We had in 1976. I remember at the rodeo here in town. We had let's see, there was Merle came and played. Loretta and Conway played. Who else did we have? Mel Tillis played, and they had all these acts came in. So they told me to go to the Marriott Hotel there at the Astrodome, and I got a suite, and I had an ongoing cocktail party for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
And
you're still alive today.
Yeah, well, that's a whole. Believe me and Merle and Bill Bailey sat out in my old car and drank a bottle of Jack Daniels one time before he went on stage. It was quite a treat.
What we like to do, and I'm telling you, I'm already excited about doing it with you, is we bring people back a second time to talk about stories.
Oh man,
And I used to stand at the end of the bar there with you at Borski's.
Yeah.
And story after story after story.
Yeah.
But tell me about Willie starting a record company and trying to get you to
go to work for him.
That. Yeah.
Well, at that time, that was about 1978, 79. I had left Houston and MCA and went to work for Capricorn in San Francisco. And I was in my office there, and my secretary said, "Barry, somebody's on the phone, and he says his name's Willie Nelson." And I went, "Oh, Willie." Hell, I'd never met Willie. And I had a long table that I used for a desk, and I would just walk around the table all day on the telephone talking to music directors and program directors.
Smiling and dialing.
Yeah, smiling and dialing. And so I put him on the speakerphone, and this voice goes, "Barry, Willie Nelson." And more, you can't
Miss that.
miss that voice. And I said, "How you doing, Willie?" And he goes, "Let me tell you," he says, "now I'm cranking up a record label here in Austin. It's going to be called Lone Star Records. And I want you to come to work for me." And he says, "I've talked to all the music directors and program directors all over Texas, and you're the man for the job." He said, "I want you." And I went, "Well, I don't know." And he goes, "And you need to be back in Texas anyway." And boy, I miss Texas, something fierce. Once you're from Texas, it's hard to get away, no
You
matter
mean
where.
San Francisco is different from Texas?
Although I will tell you this, back then when I was there, San Francisco was a wonderful city.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And there was so many people there in radio and...
Capricorn was doing kind of funky stuff, right?
yeah, well, we did, of course, the Allman Brothers, Marshall Tucker, Wet Willie, all that Southern rock.
Yeah.
It's...
But anyway.
But then Willie, let me get back to Willie because this is a good story. And he said, "I want you to come talk to me." And I said, "What's the funny thing?" He says, "They're sending me to, actually Capricorn had a country record, and I can't remember what the guy's name was, Kenny Dell or Dave. I can't remember what his name was.
There was a Kenny Odell and there was a Kenny Dale.
Yeah, I think it was.
Dale.
So
It was on Capricorn, and they wanted me to come down and get it played in Texas. So I said, "They're flying me to Texas." And I said, "I'll holler at you, Willie." And he goes, "Great." So I got to Texas and made my rounds in Houston and San Antonio and Austin. And then I called Willie and I said, "Well, I'm here in town." And he goes, "Well, I got you a room over at the, I don't know, some big Austin hotel that was a really big go-to place and still is, I think. I can't remember the name of it." And he said, "Go there." And he goes, "We're having a cocktail party tomorrow night, and I'm introducing bringing in people from the radio, and they had it at that theater that he owned for a while there, where they filmed Austin City Limits and all that there.
Okay.
And so I went, and Whitley came up to my room, and we had a big time. And as only Willie does.
There's a song about that now, you know.
I'll never smoke with Willie again.
No,
There's something, something like that. Yeah,
Toby Keith and
and whoa. But anyway, but the bad part about that, he goes, Barry, if you come to Texas, come back to work and come to work for me. He said, you'll never believe all the good-looking women here in Austin that go to this college, and you'll be right in the middle of them. And I went, oh, gee, that was like putting a kid in a candy store, you know. But the thing is, he had all the acts already signed. He had these people sign, all the local yokels. He had Steve Fromholtz. Oh, yeah. He had signed. He had the Giesenslaw brothers. I remember to this day. And I'm thinking about, my God Almighty. I mean, I love it. What's his name? The Giesenslaw. He was a great DJ.
Sam,
he was a great DJ, but he wasn't much of a singer. But I was thinking it was going to be my job to get that played all over the United States. And I don't think they were going to give me the same welcome as they did in Texas.
In Texas, no.
Yeah.
No.
So I called him about a week later and said, I don't think I'm going to do it. And I'm fortunate I didn't, because the label didn't last but 8 or 9 months and went under anyway. So
I vaguely remember that Lone Star label.
It didn't last long. Yeah, it didn't last long. Yeah. Well, he had a deal. I think it was had a distribution deal with Columbia, I think, at the time, and he had a deal where they're going to let him cut one album a year on his label, Lone Star. So that's what they were.
Right. It was going to be like one of those sub-labels of Columbia, basically.
Well, that's what happened with all the major labels. Yeah. You know, all the major labels, that's what happened in the record business.
Yep.
All these labels got bought up, and one label bought up all these other labels, so they only had so much room for vice presidents and national promotion men and all that stuff. So.
You know, I think my buddy Jack Green and some other guys in Nashville, there was a label, Hickory.
Hickory, yes. It was a small independent label that did quite well. A lot of people started out on Hickory. I think Earl Thomas Connolly was on Hickory to start with, and a lot of people were.
Yep. Well, so you did that and did that and did that.
Oh, man.
And so kind of how'd that wind up, and you came back to Houston, right?
In 1981, Capricorn had gone out of business, and once again I found myself out of a job, so it was time for me to come back to Texas. And I came back to Texas, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with myself, and so I did some independent promotion. It's what everybody does in the record when you're a promo man, work for major labels. You end up doing independent promotion for a while, like Roger Ramsey and all those boys. You know? But I came home and we started that record label in Nashville, Union Station. Like I said, with a fellow by the name of that I'd worked with at ABC, Tom McEntee, and B.J. McElwee, and a fellow by the name of Scott Tutt, who was, I can't remember their name, was the founder of Alabama, and before they were Alabama, and he was their producer and manager, and he was part of our label, and didn't work out.
Yeah. How long did that last?
About a year.
Yeah.
And we had about 3 or 4 singles charted, maybe more than that, probably 8 or 10 that made, the top 40 in the Billboard charts and Cashbox and all that. But
then did you do something else around?
Yeah. Then I went to. Yeah. Then I had no idea what the heck I was going to do, so I went over and did some radio sales for a period of time in the early '90s. I went to work for Aggie 96.
Okay.
And matter of fact, you were there at the time, I believe, working nights.
Yeah, I was.
And my good friend Josh
was
doing mornings. there, and it was a lot of fun. Met a lot of interesting people. And
now, how long did you do radio sales?
Not very long.
Okay.
About 8 or 9 months, I think it was
Okay.
about it. It was I was a flash in the pan.
Right.
And when anybody would come to town, once again, they'd send me out. Like I forget the first time.
Garth Brooks.
Garth Brooks.
Oh, Garth Brooks, yeah.
He came in and played the big country thing there.
Yep.
So Mr. Springer sent me down to pick him up, and he and his wife, and take him all to Walmart for a record, yada yada, and he was an interesting cat.
Yeah, to say the least.
But anyway, that didn't last long.
Was it long then before you decided to run a club?
Well, no, that was that was a pretty long time. I got involved in the ad specialty business in Houston, and with the connections I had, I was very fortunate. I knew the people that had Kilt, and so I sold them a lot of T-shirts and cups and mugs and keychains.
Oh, yeah.
And I had several big major accounts and did very well. Actually, I made a lot more money in the ad specialty business than I did in the record business.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is good.
But I was
Well, I was just gonna say that now the club thing came along. When did that?
That was about 2000, about the year 2000. I inherited some property in Huntsville, Texas, from my grandparents, and I was going to. My mother's house, she lived there, and her home burned to the ground. And when it did, the woman I was married to at the time and I decided to build a house there to give her a place to live, and we were thinking about living there ourselves. So we built a house from the ground up, and we'd always stop while the house was being built, we'd stop at Borski's Tavern in between New Waverly and Willis, Texas, right down the road from here where we are. And the owners was a couple, and they had asked my wife. My wife was involved in commercial real estate in Houston, and they asked her if she'd be interested in trying to sell the place. So we got home, and I said, why don't we just buy it? So I'll be damned. That's what we did. Mm-hmm. We bought it, and I had it for 7 years. And it got me back. It really gave me a chance to get back involved in the music business because I had live music there 6 days a week, and got to meet a lot of people there, including this man sitting right next to me here, Country Jim Sloan, and
my daughter played one of her first gigs there. We had her on the podcast,
and of course Don Martinez, Rick
Sowsley, all those people,
But now you had some pretty good out of town.
I still had, and I was very fortunate. I had a young lady helping me book acts there by the name of Leslie T. Travis.
Yep,
I'm sure you remember Leslie. And she and I did the booking, and I brought in Dale Watson, Gary P. Nunn. Just a lot of people, and my good friend now, Jamie Richards, had left Nashville. He originally from Oklahoma, and he's done quite well for himself. He's hot as a firecracker now.
Yeah.
And different people, the Band of Heathens. I brought in a lot of people that introduced a lot of local people to these acts that they normally wouldn't have got to see. Mm-hmm. There was only 2 places around town that had this kind of music, and that was us and the Blancos in Houston.
Yeah.
And they'd come in and play Blancos one night and play Borski's the next night, or vice versa, And had some great times with Borski's. Met a lot of wonderful people.
Yeah. Been there a long time.
Since 1945, the year I was born.
I grew up in this area. Uh-huh. So when I was 16, 17, we used to go to Borski's and play pool.
Oh, yeah.
And eat barbecue sandwiches, so that's what they had there.
And you ask about Hank Thompson.
Yeah, well, I think Hank Thompson
played there
That was in
yes.
the 90s, I believe.
And Johnny Bush.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The fella that I bought it from, Sam Page, he thought he was a singer, and so
Yeah. He just passed away recently.
yes, wasn't long ago.
And the place is sold. I don't know if there's anything.
Yes, it's still open.
It is.
Matter of fact, I stopped there. We were on our way from Houston, and I said, "Hell, let's stop in the Borski's. I haven't been there since I sold the place." And we went in there, and that's a whole nother story too. But a gal's running it named Carrie Parcell, and she's the owner of it. He owns a bar in Houston, and he bought it. And but it's and they've got it fixed up real nice. They get it cleaned up. It's pretty sharp, but they don't do music like
Right.
like I did.
That is something else. Well, Barry, we sure do appreciate you being with us,
Yeah.
man. I tell you, we just had.
We're gonna beg you to come back, my
We're going to do a part 2.
We have.
We're going to do a part. I know there's some more stories there
Oh, man.
somewhere, man. I tell you.
I've got loaded stories. It's right now, top of my head. I just did one of these not too long ago with a friend of mine, a DJ in New Orleans, and he was at WTIX for many, many years. His name is Bob Walker, and he was like the oldies king of New Orleans, and he called me from Metairie, and we did one of these things and telling stories. And,
Right.
Great.
And
A lot of fun.
it's just unfortunately those days are over and done with.
Sure.
Well,
Sure.
memories are a nice thing. I enjoy them.
You can't get rid of the memories.
No.
You know. So, but anyway, well, Barry, once again, we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Adios, everybody.
We'll see y'all on the next one.
Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.